everyone, it's Lindsay and welcome back to my channel. How are you, my beautiful blushing babushkas? I've missed you. First of all, I just want to say thank you for 5,000 subscribers. What the heck? I can't believe that there are so many of you that just like to watch me fart around on camera and try to write books. But I thought it would be fun to celebrate and do the perfunctory, I got 5K, let's do a Q&A. I went to both Instagram and YouTube and asked for you guys to leave me questions if you wanted to, and I'm here to answer them. Also, you guys showed up for the soup questions. It made my entire life. No one ever asked me about my favorite soups, and soups are my favorite topic of conversation. I literally saw this meme like 5 seconds after I posted that I wanted soup questions, and I was like, yep, screenshot saving for this video. And when I say I prepared for these soup questions, I prepared. I made a list. Soups are no joke. I'm gonna go ahead and get started, but I just wanted to say if I don't get your question individually, it's probably because I got another one very similar, so I'm just like combining all of the ones together. Yeah, let's just get right in. First question, would you ever consider self-publishing? Are you ever planning to stop over in Canada? I would love to stop over in Canada. In fact, I would love to stop over permanently, but that's probably not gonna happen anytime soon. Tours and events and stuff like that are always up to my publisher, so unless they're like, hey, we want you to go somewhere, I'm just assuming I'm staying right here in little old Ohio. But yes, I would consider self-publishing one day. That is something that I think would be fun to do, kind of like a hybrid publishing situation. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I am published, but I'm a very small baby published author and no one knows who I am yet. And I feel like you need to have a mass following or a lot of money to market to do self-publishing enough to like make a living on. If I do self-publish one day, it'll be much more in the future when I have a bigger backlist in traditional publishing, but it's not anything I'm against. It's just something I'm not doing anytime soon. Fun question. Would you rather be covered in fur or feathers? Honestly, fur, I feel like is much more functional. Feathers are like flashy, like I would be looking good, you know? But fur is functional. What things do you have planned for the Odds launch and when? So I'm going to be having an in-person launch party at my brand new favorite indie. I'm really excited to launch it in person there. If you guys are in the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana area, I would love for you to come. I don't know about the virtual launch yet. I know I'm gonna do one just like I did with the Glass Witch last year, where I did a live show. We hung out for an hour and a half. I answered questions. I gave away tons of stuff. Like every 15 minutes there'll be another giveaway, and just getting to see you guys and hang out with you guys. It's always one of my favorite parts of book release, is like doing the release with you, because you've been here the whole time I've been working on these books. It's just like so incredible. But I'm not really sure what day I'm gonna do it yet. Keep an eye and an ear out, and when I get a date and time figured out, I'll let you guys know. What tools do you use to outline your writing projects? For outlining, I use Anatomy of Story to give me the beats, and then I usually work on like notebook paper or Word doc just to kind of like feel out where I want to put the beats, and then once I'm like pretty sure this is where they're going, I'll switch everything over into a Google Sheets, because I find having columns and rows a lot easier to get everything out that way, because I do like to track a bunch of different things in my outline. Not to plug myself, but I do have a video about my outlining and brainstorming process. What would you tell 15-year-old you? My goodness. Right to the heart. I feel like I had really bad self-confidence issues, and I didn't know that I did. I just like thought that was the norm. I was so caught up and worried about what other people thought of me that I don't even feel like I got to be like my real self unless I was like home and with my family. I would just tell myself to relax. Like, chill out. Who cares what Joe Schmo, Cindy Lou Who thinks of you? You're never gonna see them again. What's your favorite witchy woo-woo thing? Any kind of jewelry that I can put like a meaning behind, kind of to remind me of something I'm working on, if that makes sense. Like crystal jewelry, for example. The stones have different properties or whatever. I don't mean to be like, but I don't know. I'm not as woo-woo as some people, and that's fine, whatever level of woo or not woo you are. In my personal opinion, I don't necessarily believe that these stones actually have like magical powers. If they do, great, bonus. But I wear this black one, for example, when I just need to like work on my confidence. And same thing, I brought over one of my favorite necklaces too. I have this really cutie little snake necklace, and I don't know, I just feel like snakes are fierce and they're confident and they don't care what anyone thinks about them. Whenever I need to work on that, I put them on, and then throughout the day, if I like I notice I'm wearing a ring, I'm like, oh, are you being confident? Are you letting other people decide your worth? Like, you know, that kind of thing. And it's just like an instant little checkup, and it really helps me stay on track with my mindset. I think someone later in the video asks me, how do I stay so positive all the time? And that's one of the ways to do it, having like a literal touchstone. Like, have a piece of jewelry or something you wear on your body that like reminds you whenever you notice you're wearing that thing, like list 5 things you're grateful for. Remember to take the small stuff in and like, you know, just like feel your life, you know? Now that you made it to England, what's your next dream vacation? Well, I need to go back to England because I didn't get to see everything I wanted to, but I really want to go to, oh God, I want to go to the Cliffs of Moher so bad. I just have this moment in my head. I know it's going to be like a whole like spiritual awakening, but I'm just like standing on the cliffs and there's like wind and the rush of the sea and my clothes are billowing back and it's just gonna be like, I've reached the 5th dimension. There are some smaller trips that I do want to do. I really want to go to Salem during Halloween, as well as going to New Orleans, which I think I'm actually doing next spring with my Authortube gang. So I'm excited. If you wrote an adult book, what would it be? Or are you interested in writing an adult book? I got lots of questions asking this. And yes, I would love to write an adult book one day. A lot of my YA fantasy ideas, I'm like, that's actually adult. I don't know if I'll ever write them. Most likely, if I'm writing an adult book, it's gonna be a thriller. Thrillers is my most read genre. So yeah, I think I would definitely write an adult thriller before I wrote an adult fantasy, but I have more adult fantasy ideas. How do you write pet care, garden, clean house with a disability? I'm disabled and it's hard. Listen, it is freaking hard. And everyone's situation is so different. Like what works for me may not work for you, you know? But what I do is 2 main things. First of all, be kind to yourself and realize when you can't do it, you can't do it. Second, time management. Time management is great for everyone, but especially for us disabled folks that have less hours in the days than everyone else. On days you're feeling well and on days you're feeling up to it, prioritize what you need to do. I would suggest making lists or having a planner or something to really keep you organized. How different is the published version of the Glass Witch versus the queried version? It's actually very, very similar. I did one quick round of line edits with my agent before we went on submission, and then with my editor at Scholastic, we did a couple rounds of mainly I think we tightened or like finessed things to make them a bit more like poignant, but yeah, nothing substantial, which was great. I really lucked out with that one. As someone looking into trad pub, what is some advice you would bestow? Oh boy. Well, get ready for a rejection because that's normal. I would say really ask yourself if this is something you are like mentally and emotionally prepared for, because it is incredibly exhausting and draining at times. Man, I see so many people struggle with it, and it can take years and years to break in. So you really have to be in the right mindset to do it. And I think you need to go into it with the right mindset of really loving your work, no matter how much hardship you face, continuing to love your work and writing for you, writing the things you're passionate about and like telling the stories you need to tell. Because if you don't have that passion or that light pulling you through the darkness, oh boy. Also, second piece of advice, I would say to research, do as much as you can, learn absolutely as much as you can about every single facet of writing itself, but also publishing, get to know the agents, the houses, try to study trends if you can, read what is new, what is being released, what is being bought, read in your genre, read out of your genre, in your age category, out of your age category, all that is so important. Can you tell us a bit about your familiars? Love when they make an appearance. Okay, yes, I have a bunch of familiars who are the stray cats that live in the woods behind me. Right now there are 4. There are 2 males and 2 females. I'm actually really happy because someone in my area has started doing the like trap, neuter, release program. So I've noticed some of them have been coming around with their little ears tipped, which means they are now fixed. So they're not going to be bringing a ton of babies to me, which is a good thing, even though I love when the little babies come up. Got a new horde of familiars in training. Some of them are feral, some of them are more domesticated, some of them have been domesticated by me because their moms bring them up as babies and I'm just like, eh. But yeah, they hang out with me while I do my gardening and my meditation or whatever I'm doing in the back patio. Will you be house hunting soon? Well, I hope. Scholastic, buy better bones so I can get a freaking house. Next question is, what's your dream house? Ooh, realistic dream house or like fantasy dream house? Because fantasy dream house is, I want a big manor in England with like double story library with the sliding ladder. Have you guys seen the Haunted Mansion, the Eddie Murphy version? I just want that library. What's your writing process? Outline, whatever happens that day, every detail. Okay. Short version, I definitely spend a lot of time brainstorming, sometimes up to months, and then outlining usually takes me a couple weeks. And then going into actually doing the writing part, like my day to day, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning, I do my workout with my husband, I shower, I have breakfast, I usually get right to work. I work really well in 20-minute sprints, so I just put a 20-minute timer on my phone and I write. I take a lot of breaks throughout the day as well. I'm also spending some time doing some YouTube stuff, whether it's filming like I am now or editing or answering comments. I also have emails to think about and some marketing stuff happening right now. And then I usually try to call it a day around 4 p.m. And then I hang out with my family. We have dinner. We usually watch some kind of little show and then I read until bed, physically read. And then at 7, like right on the dot 7, I get in bed and I audiobook until like 8:30 whenever I fall asleep. Living that good old grandma life. What is your biggest avenue that helps book sales? Would love to know. The absolutely most massive part of my sales is the Scholastic book fair. It's like astronomical compared to my sales that are just like people walking in Barnes & Noble and buying it. Schools and libraries, but really the Scholastic book fair. How significantly does CP beta feedback change your book? Is it mainly sense, clarity check? It really depends. My critique partner work is a little bit more intensive than my beta readers. Critique partners like actually get in there when the book is still feeling very drafty. I usually give my third draft to my critique partners when I've made it as good as I can, and I let them check over it for big picture stuff that I might have missed. That usually has more effect than beta reader feedback, which beta reader is like, it's pretty much a finished book at this point. I'm getting opinions, I'm getting last minute tweak type things. I think the biggest changes I've had are when I've either needed to cut or add chapters to my novel because something needed filled or bulked or something. What's a genre you'd love to write in that you haven't or aren't already? Sci-fi might be fun, but I don't think I read enough sci-fi to feel confident and comfortable, I guess, writing it. I got a couple questions asking what was the most shocking thing about traditional publishing or what in the process was different than what I originally had thought. And I actually like just really had to sit here for a minute. I'll edit it all out, but like I had to sit here for a minute and really think about it because I just like, I did so much research before I knew how things were gonna go. I knew how I was gonna be treated. But I think the thing that was surprising me was like, even though I knew how it was gonna go, like I still like have emotional reactions to things sometimes when it's like, you know, you're gonna feel this way. Like for instance, my second book is about to come out. It's felt very much so to me like it's so much less important than my debut. Everyone talks about this. The publishers always do more for your first book than your second book in a deal because, you know, at the time you're the shiny new object. I knew I was gonna kind of feel like a secondhand toy with my second book, so I was prepared, but then I was surprised that I emotionally was like, any advice on querying to agents? Off the top of my head, research your agents and make sure that there's something that you want and that they're at the agent level caliber to get you into a publishing house you want. Like if your goal is that you just want to see your book in print and you're totally fine with like a vanity press or a small indie press and you want an agent that'll get you into those, that's totally fine. But there are some agents that are only going to be able to do that and not be able to get you into like Simon & Schuster or whatever. So you really need to do your due diligence and be researching their sales and the other clients they have and all of that kind of stuff, because either path is fine. It's about what you want and what you want for your career, but you just got to make sure you get the right agent that can get you in the right places. Who was your favorite character to write? That's so hard. I love all my side characters because all my side characters in a way are kind of like foils to my main characters, which are always like very grumpy. So I have like grumpy main characters and sunshine foils or sidekicks. For example, in The Odds, my sidekick character is named Bass and he's an aspiring mortician and he's 10 years old. He has all this pressure on him because in his family they all have these magical oddities, which means there's something weird about them that has to do with music. That is their special power. His entire family for generations has been like big jazz musicians and like famous, and all he wants to do is embalm dead bodies. At the same time though, I'm really enjoying writing my main character in my YA thriller horror, just because like it's been so long since I've written YA and it's so fun to like really delve into those like sticky, deep, dark emotions. The project's working title is called Project Pyro because my main character is a pyromaniac. She is just not even grumpy. She's to the point where she's just like straight up mean. Like she's a mean girl, but she also has this like vicious loyalty to her family. She's also Appalachian, so she's coming from that background of like very insular culture where there's all this like strange mysticism and like spiritualism because they're surrounded by woods and they can't get out. But then also there's like the poverty and the drugs and like all that stuff. So it just like makes this really interesting mix of a gal. I love that. I love writing a tough girl because I'm not a tough girl, okay? Like I'm a soft angel baby. So I've been really just having fun writing this girl who like loves playing with fire and will like stab you if you get in her way. And now It's soup time. We're gonna do a speed round of soup questions. I love you guys for this. I got a lot of questions asking my favorite soup or the one soup to rule them all. How am I supposed to choose? But if I had to, I guess I would say like cream of chicken gnocchi soup with some spinach and some bacon. Oh my gosh, so good. Do you blend your soups? Only if the recipe calls for it, otherwise no. Do you only do veggies in your soup, or do you sometimes mix it up with meat, potatoes, or noodles? Everything in soup, always. One soup per season, go. Spring, light and full of vegetables. I'm thinking like a zuppa toscana or like a garden vegetable soup of some sort. Summer, oh, maybe a homemade chicken noodle with like a salad on the side to kind of like freshen it up. Something just light and brothy, maybe even lemony. Fall, I want something spiced. I want like a curry. I want a dal. For winter, I want something creamy and thick, or I want a chili. Favorite soup to make? None. I hate cooking. Favorite soup someone else makes? Any of them, because I hate cooking. A soup recipe for someone who loves having soup or bread or rice, please. Anything creamy for bread. Bread always. Bread is always the answer. Rice, chicken and wild rice soup. There are some fuzz that you can have with rice. Everything, always. Rank your top 3 soups. Cream of chicken gnocchi or cream of chicken pasta. They give like the same vibe. I love pho. I love a spicy lemongrass pho. I think it's called like bon boy hue. I probably slaughtered that, but delicious. And no one asked me my least favorite soup, okay? Because there is one. Tomato soup. And that's because to me, it's not a soup, it's a dip for grilled cheese. Soup, stew, or bisque? I would say soup because there are more soups that I like, but I also like a bisque. And I'm not mad at stews. Easiest, simple, quickest recipe. I have this like Paula Deen recipe. I can link it down below. You just yeet a whole bunch of like creamy and potato-y stuff in a crock pot, and then you just eat it in 6 hours. It's wonderful. All right, if it's cool with you guys, which like you don't have a choice, I'm gonna do the YouTube questions over here at my desk so I can see them. All right, jumping right in. How different was writing The Glass Witch from The Odds? In terms of time, pressure, organization, first drafts, etc. In terms of organization, nearly the same. I use the same method. Timeline-wise, The Glass Witch was a lot quicker. I always talk about how she is my perfect angel baby. She has a very simple plot, so she was just like easy for me once I had it outlined to just write straight through, and I had her completely finished from like idea into finished product in 6 months. The Odds I was working on while I was working on other books and also working on edits for The Glass Witch and promoting and marketing stuff. So The Odds took a little bit more time. The Odds has a way more complex plot as well. And I felt like there were a lot of things that I was emotionally working through with The Odds as well. The Glass Witch, I just deal with what it was like being a chubby girl when I was a child. I've pretty much worked through that, and I have like I have a very good sense of like body love right now. But in The Odds, this story is more about disability acceptance, and I was currently like going through that while writing The Odds, so it was a little bit more emotionally difficult. There were definitely some scenes that actually choked up a little bit writing, which I had never done that before, and yeah, it was something. I would love to hear about you first got into writing. Were you a storytelling kiddo, and when was the shift to seeking to doing it professionally? So yes, I was a huge storytelling kiddo. I love dolls and stuffed animals, and I was always making up really complex stories and character dynamics for them. In fact, I was a nightmare to play with, according to my mother, because if she played with one of my dolls and it did not act in character, I would call her out. I always loved reading as a kid, which I think was like a big part of it all. And then when I was 12, I decided I wanted to start writing poetry. Bad decision, Lindsay. And then I quickly found out that I'm not very good at poetry, and but I do love writing a good spooky story. So I wrote a lot of scary short pieces until I was like 15 when I started working on my first novel. How many projects do you have on the back burner? I remember from an old vlog you talked about a gothic YA project, but I don't think it was mentioned again. I know you're working on a YA thriller alongside Bitter Bones, but are there any other stories that you're eager to write in the future? Oh yeah, I have a lot of stories. As I've mentioned before, I have a note card holder full of note cards full of story ideas that I want to write. Those are all just like little baby story embryos right now. Not many of them are developed. I did work a little bit on the gothic YA horror while I was in England because I wanted to write my gothic horror while staying in an English manor. I'll put that video down below. I think it was just a wrap up, but the clips are in there. But that's it. That's my only fully actualized novel that is on the back burner. I mean, I guess kind of my YA thriller Project Pyro is on the back burner too while Bitter Bones takes place. I have one main project and then two on the back burner, and then one like, you know, back in the oven. She's so far back. Do you have any plans to put When the Sea Came for Us on sub, or will you go on sub with a different YA instead? So for those of you that have been around a while, you might remember When the Sea Came for Us. This is the novel that I started writing when I started to my channel. She is a dark YA fantasy. I have 7 drafts of her. She died in the query trenches, and I decided to make a cover and format and turn her into a real book just to sit on my shelf. Right now I have no plans to put this book on submission. It needs a deep edit at this point. I actually have plans for an 8th draft like way back in my Google Drive. So when I go on submission with a YA, I'm hoping it's Project Pyro, my YA thriller. I do have kind of like a funny little idea I've been tossing around with some of my critique partners, and I was like, what if I take this book and turn it into like a dark, spicy, problematic TikTok romance? I read Fourth Wing, which is like taking the world by storm, and this is actually quite a lot like that in like plot. Like disabled girl taken to a training camp, kind of likes her superior officer, is an underdog. There's some kind of speculative element, and this it's mermaids, and that it's dragons. So I'm like, I could turn this spicy and like but I'm just playing around. I don't think I'll actually do it. Maybe for funsies. What are some of your favorite books that you've read this year that you haven't talked about yet? That's so hard because in every month I do an updates video where I talk about my favorite books for that month. The only ones I can think of right now are ones that I haven't talked about yet for August. I recently just finished this adult horror behemoth, House of Leaves, which I honestly feel like isn't really even a book. It's like a full project because you have to like decode things and read parts in mirrors, and there's braille in here, and you're always flipping the book upside down to read different passages, and like there's pages that look like this. I really enjoyed this. It's not gonna be for everyone. I'm not gonna go into full details here because it'll take forever, but I've really enjoyed this book. What are some of your most anticipated 2024 releases? Let's get on Goodreads and find out. Well, right off the bat, definitely Silverborn, the 4th book in the Morgan Crow series. It's gotten pushed back like twice and broken my heart each time. Now it's coming out September of next year. Ooh, Blood Justice, the 2nd book in the Blood Justice duology. That first book, so fun. It was literally like the Vampire Diaries, but with witches in New Orleans. It was just so fun. Oh, the 3rd book in the Atlas 6 trilogy comes out. I really like that series. And then Libba Bray is supposedly releasing a new book. It was supposed to be released this year, but I think it's being released next year. It's called Under the Same Stars, and she always does like historical fantasy books. So this one's set in the 40s. I don't know. I read anything by her because I think she's fantastic. I also pick up anything by thriller authors Ruth Ware, Alice Feeney, or Samantha Downing. So anything that they come out with. I don't even think anything's announced yet, but any of those. Any tips for writing a solid query letter? Make sure you're putting in as many buzzwords in the query as possible, like attention-getting words. Make it voicey if you can. Find really interesting or unique comps, and get someone who is also a writer to kind of like look it over. How do you develop a distinct voice for each book? Do you find yourself starting to use similar voices and have to consciously create a new one, or does each story come up with its own unique voice in your head? I never actually ran into this problem until I started writing Bitter Bones. I find that my main character Casey is reading a lot like Adelaide from The Glass Witch, and I think it's because they're both just kind of like angry, sad little kids. When I notice that's happening though, I like pull myself out of it and I'm like, okay, he is his own individual person. And I also have to remember too, like he's gonna be seeing the world through a different lens, so that's something that I'll fix in revisions. He's a writer and he loves horror. He's gonna be speaking like with a ton of like writer metaphors and horror metaphors, see the world, you know, and kind of that way. Whereas Addie saw the world through baking, like that was her thing. The odds, I didn't really have this problem because I wrote it in 3rd person, so it was a little bit easier there. And then with my YA thriller, she's a teenager, so she's speaking much different than my other project. Do you have any uncommon advice that helped you in your journey for other aspiring writers? Yes. Look at rejection as a rite of passage. I swear this will help you emotionally and mentally so much. What is the first story you remember writing? I think I have a really old video that I can link down below, and it's talking about all of my trunked novels, all of the novels that I started before, you know, I started this channel and really started taking it seriously. And I think I go over everything in there, like what that book was about. It was 64 pages, but also I was 12. Really proud of her for that. But it was a very problematic YA, as a 12-year-old would write YA, of a girl who was running from a psychopathic killer who was murdering people around her high school. I was a delightful 12-year-old. I would really like to know more about what publisher turnaround deadlines look like for edits and whatnot, if you're allowed to share. For the most part, my deadlines have always been really flexible. I will give my book to my editor and she will say, hey, I'll look over this and I will be back to you by this time. So she gives herself a deadline to get it back to me. When she does send it back to me, she said, hey, you know, can you get this to me by this date? And for big developmental stuff, when we're like earlier on in the process, I usually have more time. I think I've usually usually had like months. And then as we get closer to the publishing date and we do things like line edits or copy edits, the dates get shorter. I think the shortest amount of time I've had for one has been like 2 weeks maybe for a copy edit, but those are really simple. How do you know a story is worth telling, that people will actually like your book? I think those are two very separate questions, right? I think a story is worth telling if it's something that you feel is worth telling. Like, you gotta write for yourself first, right? So if you feel like this story is something that like sings to your soul, like you just have to get it out, then it's worth telling. Now, the question of if people will actually like your book, that's very different. That I think you would have to look at publishing trends, what's hot on the market, what's selling. But I always say, I think you should be writing 70% for yourself, 30% with the audience in mind. That being said, I think that if you're loving a book and you're passionate about a book, it'll come out on the page. And I think a reader is much more likely to enjoy something that they can tell an author is passionate about, and they will enjoy it more because of that. Have you ever written fan fiction? Please tell us all the embarrassing details. So somehow I missed out on the fan fiction wave when I was a kid, at least officially, like writing on forums and stuff. But I did write basically a plagiarized Lord of the Rings fan fiction where I, a 15-year-old girl, self-insert character, fell in love with Legolas and like went on adventures together. And it was set in a world I created, but like everything else was stolen. Like, I legitimately just called him Legolas in the story. That's the closest thing that I've ever written to fan fiction. I'd love to know how you maintain a positive mindset, both for your writing career and your mental and physical health. It's a lot of just constantly reminding myself what I'm grateful for and like repeating those things. I think a lot of times we get bogged down in like all of the negative and all the bad things happening, but if you just like take a step back and like breathe and you're like, I'm here, like I'm doing my thing, and like list out all of the good things that are happening in your life, even the small things, which I think people like forget about a lot. Like, I always say the fact that my windows are open this morning is such a blessing, because as a migraine sufferer, sometimes I can go 3 to 4 days without seeing sunlight. So like, it's like the very little things, and if you just let the joy of those little things like soak into your whole being for a minute and then go about your day, it really changes your mindset. And I think it's something you have to get in the practice of doing. Like, it doesn't just come naturally, but yeah, once you get in the mindset of just like constantly being grateful for all of the small things around you, like you'll just see the world in such a different way. Kelly asked, what's your dream pet? Because I asked her that for her Q&A. My dream pet, okay, so like I talk about this all the time, but I really want parakeets. I want 2 male parakeets, and I want to call them Michael and Dwight, but I don't know if that's ever gonna happen. Like, dream pet, because I would have to be an actual farmer for this, I would really like to have goats, because goats are my favorite animals. They're so funny. I have like this spiritual connection with them. Like, they flock to me. I think they see me as their goddess, and I see them as my goddesses. So goats and parakeets. Okay, so that is all the YouTube questions. That was all the Instagram questions. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was fun for you. It's kind of like a little bit self-indulgent, I feel like, when I do these, but I wanted to celebrate 5K, and I feel like there's so many more of you now, and maybe you don't know me as well, so hopefully you know more about me, at least my soup taste, which is honestly the most important thing to know about me. Links to my books are in my link tree, linked down below. You can purchase and pre-order them, and yeah, I'm gonna go. It was great talking to you guys, and I will most definitely see you in the next one. Bye!